So Boston, what are you finding in terms of the companies that come through this particular accelerator in this city? Is there particular expertise, verticals that they tend to be dominating?
So in general, the expertise related with each program resembles the expertise associated with that city. In Boston, we're particularly good at hard tech. We have excellent, outstanding universities, MIT, Harvard, Northeastern, Tufts, BU, many others. And those universities invest a lot in laboratory equipment and a lot in hard science-based technology. So we see in particular a lot of healthcare, a lot of life sciences, but really anything that has to do with science and is difficult and requires smart people. What
about the other cities you've gone into? We mentioned there Rhode Island, but also you're going to Israel, London. What takes you to a particular city?
So in general, we want to see an ecosystem that is relatively strong to very strong, and then we want to see an eagerness to work with us in a collaborative environment, and then we need to find sponsors. We're a nonprofit program that lives primarily on corporate sponsorship and foundation money and public sector money. So we look for eager partners that are willing to partner with us in an already strong but not perfect ecosystem.
Talk to me about why you're nonprofit, because a lot of accelerators are out there and they're taking skin in the game. Why don't you?
Yeah, so the main reason is philosophical, and that is that startups are a common good for humanity. If you think about it, every startup begins with a problem. They're solving some major problem for humanity. It could be curing a disease, it could be helping educate children that are not otherwise being educated, or bringing clean water to people that don't have it, or just improving the way we buy shoes. It doesn't really matter, but they're looking at some major problem and trying to fix it. So that's already good, but then in addition to that, as a byproduct, they produce wealth, growth, and optimism, right, which are all great things. Yeah. So they produce jobs in great numbers, and they produce optimism and hope in society. So that's a common good for humanity. We don't want to take anything from them. We want to remove as much friction as we can from the growth path of startups, because the world is better when there are more startups.
I mean, it can't all be altruism as well. I mean, does it actually make getting them funding slightly easier? Do corporates or the VCs think actually, you know, they're not being manipulated by the ones that you're trying to direct them?
Yeah, you're totally right. And so this is a great example of where doing good also helps you do well. And that is that it's also easier to attract high-quality startups, because just think, if you and I have what we believe is a multi-billion-dollar startup, why would we give away 6 or 7% equity in return for introductions and office space when it's possible to get that for free?
I see.
Right?
You talk there about the social good that some startups do, some don't. We're in an era now where many are focusing on the ethics, the culture of a business as it grows, and to ensure it does remain better for those that use it and better for those that work for them. How are you starting to have those conversations with the startups that come in? Is it something that you've realized over the last few years?
Yeah, we do. From the very beginning, we have this conversation with all of our startups, and the idea is that at an early stage, you got to get the startup to be focused on creating as much value as possible, and not to obsess too much with profit. Profitability comes at a much later stage for a startup anyway, so focus on solving a really big problem for society. If you solve a major issue, people will pay you money for it.
And so who are coming through your doors? I think it's later in June you're going to have the next cohort come in. Where are they coming from? What sort of problems are they trying to solve?
So the Boston Accelerator receives applications from at least 40 countries every year, and will receive typically 1,700 plus applications just for Boston, over 5,000 globally for all the programs. Anybody can enter from anywhere in the world with any startup in any industry. We are helping early stage startups, meaning less than $500,000 of equity investment when they apply. And then they span all different industries. Could be a nonprofit, could be pharmaceutical or biotech, could be a clean tech or a retail clothing startup. It doesn't matter. What we're looking for as a criteria for judging is startups that have the significant potential to create a positive impact on society.
Since 2010, which was, I think, the first program, how are the conversations you're having, the challenges the companies are facing, changing?
So we continue to see a lot of, especially at the early stage of the startup ecosystem, you see people that are really idealistic and want to change the world in a positive way. We've graduated 1,500 startups since 2010. They've raised over $3 billion and generated over $2 billion of revenue and created 80,000 jobs. So they're all very effective and they do genuinely grow. But I think if you talk to the startups, when you bring them out here or you talk to them around our space, you'll find that all of them are primarily focused on solving a problem.
So the conversations haven't changed?
I have not found them to have changed very significantly at all. What we found is very early on, we were in the depth of recession. When we launched, the Dow was below 7,000. So at that time, there were a lot of entrepreneurs by necessity, and they hadn't quite adjusted even. So I think today we're seeing even more of the altruistic mentality than we were then, where people were just trying to get a job and survive.
What about when you come here and have free space? How do you ensure that you don't have zombie companies? How do you ensure that, because you know they perhaps don't fail as quickly as they should do because they're being supported by your lifelines, by the fact that they don't have to pay rent, for example. How do you ensure that they make sure that the problem they're solving is really there and the business will grow?
It's a good question. So, and our board and our team has focused on this a lot. So we want to provide support for startups, but not so much support that you prop up or subsidize a startup that otherwise should die or will die over time. The fact is that we provide them help for about 4 months, and our goal is to try to take 12 to 18 months worth of activity and compress it down into 4 months. So although we are giving them free office space and access to free manufacturing equipment, it's for a relatively short period of time, and we're doing that in combination with a massively accelerated amount of activity, giving them access to mentorship, training, and a lot of activities and networking events. So they're not sitting pretty here. They're being very active and getting a lot of work done, kind of compressing time down into only a 4-month period. So and then after that, we don't continue to offer free services forever. So market forces will take over again, and they'll be required to go and get revenue and survive like anybody else.
Flight or fight.
Yes.
It's been wonderful having you here. Well, us being here as well, under your roof. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for being here.